Transportation is the key to a living community. It advances a community's economic, cultural, and social growth, and can decrease a community's carbon footprint. Transportation can isolate, or it can open doors. Transportation facilities define the space in which community happens. Everywhere we live, it is the places we go that define our neighborhoods. The places we can't or won't go disappear from view, as do the opportunities those places represent.
The story of Richmond actually goes back a long way. The city itself was founded here because of transportation reasons. When the English settlers originally came to Virginia, they sailed up the James River, and one of the interesting geographic features of Richmond is that you have all these rocks and rapids right next to downtown. Essentially, the city was founded at the point where they simply couldn't travel any further. And for a long time, there were efforts to get around that, because once you get past the rapids at Richmond, the river is navigable again for another 100 and something miles all the way up to Lynchburg.
Richmond was a place the ships came to a halt and where land and water met. The city grew, and even though people sorted themselves and each other by race and class, every neighborhood stayed connected by trails, walkways, cart paths, and roads. People found their way to their neighbors and met each other at commercial crossroads. Richmond was the birthplace of the public electric streetcar. It was introduced in 1886.
And back during that time, well, I guess that was the main street, because it only had streetcars at that time, and that was a streetcar track on Clay Street. It ran Clay Street, so everybody could travel on Clay Street.
In 1900, Richmond became the headquarters of the C&O Railroad. Currently, trains crisscross downtown Richmond, and CSX recently moved into the area. The city was once renowned for having a triple railroad crossing in front of Main Street Station.
The more recent transportation effects have been related to the construction of highways and arterial roads through the region, connecting points of economic activity throughout Richmond and surrounding areas. The most noteworthy of these in recent history was the construction of Interstate 95, which was one of the earliest sections of interstate built in the country. Richmond, in fact, was one of the first major cities to receive an interstate through its center. When they designed the interstate, of course, they went through and figured we want it to come close to the city center, and we're going to buy out properties that are low value, with the idea that we'll go for the cheap land. Naturally, at the time this was happening, which was the right-of-way was being acquired in the 1950s, and I guess that's when they did the right-of-way, and the construction took place from the 50s into the early 60s. The neighborhoods that were most impoverished were, in fact, old African-American neighborhoods, or ones that had become African-American neighborhoods in the 20th century, and I'm thinking specifically of Jackson Ward and Navy Hill, and areas that were essentially bulldozed and made into the highway. Now, as so often happens with this, the connection with race is an interesting one, because those were, in fact, chosen as low-value properties, but it was not at all accidental that they were properties inhabited largely by African Americans, that this was simply the nature of economics and society in the United States in the 20th century.
I-64, running east to west, and I-95, running north to south, converge in Richmond. Transportation has influenced the history of our city and shaped its culture. Who our friends are, where we work, where we worship, what and how healthy we eat, whether we can get to medical care in case of a life-threatening emergency, how safe we and our children are. All of these critical life elements are shaped by where we live and what we have access to. Modern transportation dictates what is nearby, what we notice, and what can be bypassed entirely. Businesses on once thriving thoroughfares close or barely exist, and entire communities may be destroyed, cut in half, or relegated to the sidelines.
I-95, well, it just cut a swath through the north side of Richmond, Jackson Ward, and people on this side were cut off from people on that side, except at points where they built crossing. And again, it happened when the downtown expressway was built.
When the state took over all of the roads from the cities and counties, they turned most of the roads eventually back to the cities. So the city of Richmond gets a block grant from the state of Virginia to maintain all of its local roads. And this is true in Northern Virginia, it's true in Hampton Roads, it's true in the Richmond area, with one exception. Actually, there are two exceptions with counties. The two exceptions are Arlington County in Northern Virginia and Henrico County, north of Richmond. Both of those counties have made an agreement with the state that rather than have VDOT maintain their roads, they will take a block grant from the state that's allocated through some formula based on population and maintain the roads themselves. Now, it goes further than road maintenance, though, because not only are they maintaining the roads, but they're also planning and designing the roads. And so Henrico has taken on the responsibility of figuring out what roads to build, where to build them, and so on. And so we have large construction projects out there like the John Rolfe Parkway, like Parham Road, and I'll get back to that in a moment, that were designed and built by the county for their own responsibility. Now, I'll digress slightly here just to talk about the history of transportation planning to say that it was also recognized as the interstate system came up, for example, starting in the late 1950s, that this kind of extreme local decision about where should the roads be is not really functional. And so from the early stages of modern federal transportation legislation that hands out gas tax dollars from the federal government, they decided that this should be a regional effort. That is, jurisdictions whose roads work together should cooperate with each other in deciding where those roads go and how they're built. Consequently, they established what are called Metropolitan Planning Organizations. The Richmond Area MPO is based with the Richmond Planning District Commission, which handles local government interactions and cooperation. And in principle, the jurisdictions are supposed to horse trade with each other about whose road gets built and where we're going to spend the money. In practice, when you have a county like Henrico that controls probably a third of the overall population of this region, they have a certain discretion in terms of doing what they want with this process. And I think in a lot of ways violates the spirit of what we were trying to accomplish with that kind of regional planning. And you can see this very directly. For example, Parham Road, as you're aware, is a corridor that runs from the James River, where it connects with it's not state maintained, it has no state highway designation, it's maintained and operated by Henrico County. When it comes to the James River, it merges into the Chippenham Parkway going south, which does have a state route designation, it's Route 150. And it extends from the river in an arc over the north part of Henrico County. And you'll remember from the map that Henrico County essentially looks like a collar around the north side of Richmond, and it runs from the east side of the city to the west. It gives people in Henrico County a way to travel from the west to the east to the west, without having to go through the city of Richmond. And not having to go through the city of Richmond was an explicitly stated goal of this road when it was first laid out and designed. And you think, well, that's interesting. Why would it matter that we'd want the road to stay within our community? And if you look back going all the way to the 1950s, Henrico County was one of the first frontiers, let's say, of white flight from the city of Richmond as we started to get into the civil rights movement. And so at the same time, historically, that we were blasting away Jackson Ward, we were looking at Henrico County wanting to build a transportation system that has nothing to do with the city of Richmond, providing essentially a way for all those people who were saying, oh, you know, the destruction of the African-American community and the people who are left, that's a problem for Richmond. We don't really want to concern that. And if we've got money, we're going to bolt. And you actually started seeing people moving out of the city, white and black to a certain extent. And, you know, there's a complicated history around that we...
In the neighborhoods in which they operate, public transit in the forms of buses and paratransit vans for those who are disabled are available to everyone. But the range of bus service defines another wall around the community.
People having access to jobs and employment services is a huge problem in this region. Some of the workforce sites are out in the suburbs or the county. Like I visited one on Mechanicsville Turnpike, and it's way off the bus line. And I talked to people who walked from Laburnum Avenue. If you're familiar with the space for that region, they get off somewhere at Laburnum Avenue and walk almost to the town of Mechanicsville to get to this workforce site, which is dangerous. It's not it's not a sidewalk down the side of the road. It's a lot of traffic up and down 360. And so that was amazing to me to talk to people who actually had to walk in not only bad weather, but just the public safety was an issue. And so that's a concern, but also the majority of the jobs in the region is located in Henrico County. And the access to those jobs is very limited. If you go up further west Broad, you see people walking, trying to get to work. Even if they can take the bus, they may have a mile, 2-3 miles to walk to the job site. And that's just unsafe because there's no public space in some of these spaces.
I think it's a really critical issue if, thinking about a person being able to get to work or back and forth to home or even cultural events. Some people might think that a cultural event is a luxury, but really with our growing diversity, to be able to have people interact with each other and be able to combat the isolation that can occur with segmented communities is so critical. So if you have, say, a big event, a big festival downtown, but if people can't get to it, then it's not really serving its purpose.
GRTC is currently a private corporation that is owned by 2 jurisdictions in the greater Richmond area. It's owned by the city of Richmond and the county of Chesterfield. But essentially, Richmond puts up a lot of money for it. Chesterfield provides a certain amount of funds for it. Henrico County has some bus service, but they buy it from GRTC on a per-hour basis. They say where the routes are going to go, and they provide funding for that. The other interesting part of this, though, goes back to Chesterfield. Chesterfield actually has a minority share in the ownership of GRTC and controls the money, where the buses go, and so on. And for most of the last 20 years, Chesterfield has had no bus service. Actually, that's not quite true. They've had one express bus that runs more or less on the basis of what goes on in Henrico County, designed to leave from park and ride lots out in Chesterfield and carry people to downtown for middle-class jobs that they have there so they don't have to drive. Chesterfield has basically used their position in owning GRTC to prevent buses from actually operating in Chesterfield County on the theory that buses bring crime and all the other things that go with it.
According to the mayor's Richmond Anti-Poverty Commission report, Richmond has one of the most severe spatial mismatch problems in the nation, meaning that workers and jobs are not located close to one another, and public transportation does not close the gap, either for suburban workers with jobs in the city or for city workers wishing to gain jobs in the county. Even suburban workers wishing to reach suburban jobs by public transportation cannot do so. The purple cluster in the center of the map indicates areas a person can access by walking from a bus line. The blue circles are job opportunities, and the larger the circle, the larger the employer. Notice how many of the blue circles are out of reach of the purple areas. That is spatial mismatch.
We will find it difficult to deal with our affordable housing issues in this region. There are other issues as well, but one of them, you've got to have good public transportation. People have to be able to get to work, get to travel around in the region. And people will fight housing density when it means thousands of more cars.
The jobs are really on the outer ring where the jobs are developing, especially for service sector jobs. And there is a disconnect between the job growth, affordable housing, and of course the transportation, right? It's really an irony that in a metropolitan area of almost 1 million plus people, the county, the adjoining county, Chesterfield County, owns almost 50 to 60% of the shares in the transit system, but they don't really run their buses in their county.
So how do we connect people who are not now connected to jobs? How do we connect them to jobs? To some degree, it's a jobs housing mismatch issue, meaning that there are jobs in places that people who are now low wealth, which probably means they have low formal skills, not necessarily low skills, but low formal skills. They're in one place and the jobs are in another. How do we get those two together? It's a transportation problem to some degree. To some degree, it's also a community development problem. We don't necessarily have to take everybody to the job. We can sometimes bring the job to the community, but that requires a kind of neighborhood revitalization that the areas where these people live haven't seen yet. On the transportation side, we have to figure out ways to get people to jobs. There's not just one solution to this problem. One of the solutions that we hear, and which is not a bad solution in my view, is to run public transportation more widely, more broadly within the region. I think most successful regions today have a very good public transportation network, so I think it not only serves the poor, it also serves the middle class if it's a good system and it's done well. That's not where we are right now. So the question is, what do we do to get where we need to be? I think probably long term we have to be thinking about how we're going to develop the region in a region-wide transit system. But in the meantime, which is today, how do we get people to jobs? And I think there are other options. Paratransit for one thing. I don't know if we're using that nearly as much as we could be. I'm not a transportation expert, but I do think that, in my judgment, the issue is to get people to jobs now and not to get bogged down in how do we get them there.
Almost 20% of households in the city of Richmond do not own a single car. Another 60% own only one car, which makes getting to multiple jobs and appointments difficult if there is more than one adult in the family.
Transportation is really a big logjam.
This is not just a city problem. Almost 5% of Henrico County households also have no car. Given that Richmond has been ranked 92nd of 100 cities in transportation access to jobs, not having a car can make finding a well-paying job almost impossible.
We've already missed all kinds of opportunities because of lack of transit beyond the city boundaries. Amazon is a very good example where these are very good entry-level positions, and the Amazon distribution facility in Chesterfield is not accessible to bus lines.
Jobs are not the only thing affected when one does not have transportation.
And the stores on Churchill, and the quality of the food in there was terrible. It was you can't just describe it. I just refused to allow my parents to go to that store anymore. If you want quality grocery stores, you have to travel out into Mechanicsville or further away from Center City. That's unfortunate. We have a neighbor who does not have a car in my neighborhood, elderly lady, and when she sees me, she'll ask me to take her to the grocery store on Chimborazo Boulevard, and there's little marts there, but you can see that the quality is not the same as when you go further out into the county.
What could be some possible solutions? Envisioning a community of opportunity that efficiently uses social and natural resources means we have to rethink the connection between places and people. The transportation system we have wastes space, time, fuel, and human potential. Everyone can benefit from good bus and transit service with access for those too young or too old to drive, access for those with disabilities and physical limitations, access for those without a car, or access for those who simply want to relax, read, or converse with others on the commute from home to work, shops, sites, or friends. Fixing this problem requires us to look at the consequences of the physical arrangement of our community and at our willingness to interact with each other on an equal basis.
Regional collaboration, I think there have been maybe some improvements, but we have a long ways to go. Sometimes the localities don't work together in certain aspects and may even see each other as competition. But I think that we really need to be working together as a unified region to be able to promote ourselves as a region so that we can compete across the state, across the nation, internationally in this global economy.
We can start to explore how transportation can create a regional community. The Mayor's Anti-Poverty Commission has already recommended that we extend public transportation between the city and counties.
If I could take one thing of cooperation between the jurisdictions, it would be in having a robust public transportation plan that they adopted and that they aggressively went after.
What really drives the decision to build transportation facilities or operate bus companies or actually provide those kinds of services has to do with our notion of what we're actually putting into the space that we inhabit. Where should people be and what should they do when they get there? It's a question, as we say in the transportation planning business, of land use. How are we actually going to use the physical space, and what are we going to do with the transportation facilities in order to maintain that space?
A public process for regional transportation planning is available, but we need to insist on a comprehensive regional vision, rather than every jurisdiction and neighborhood for itself.
I guess we have to start with officials. If they really wanted to create a regional system, they would have to start thinking more of community. Regionalism does not mean, to me, it does not mean living with anybody you don't want to live with, but it does mean, to me it means sharing of resources, some kind of transportation system that would take people out of, well, the places where there are no jobs to the job.
As we plan for the future, we in Metro Richmond can think about not only linking our communities with affordable public transportation, but also about creating common green spaces, walkways, trails, and biking paths. We can think about how we can connect with one another and the environment so that we can enhance the quality of life for all.
One week in every February is officially designated as National Brotherhood Week. This means that we're supposed to stop whatever we're doing, burning, killing, whatever, and love everybody else. And it's really quite a strain. Here's a song about National Brotherhood Week. Oh, the poor folks hate the rich folks, and the rich folks hate the poor folks. To hate all but the right folks is an old established rule, but during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, see Cassius Clay and Mrs. Wallace dancing cheek to cheek. It's fun to eulogize the people you despise, as long as you don't let them in your school. Oh, the poor folks hate the rich folks, and the rich folks hate the poor folks. All of my folks hate all of your folks. It's American as apple pie. But during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, New Yorkers love the Puerto Ricans 'cause it's very chic. Step up and shake the hand of someone you can't stand. You can tolerate him if you try.